Welcome back. For today's tutorial, we're going to be learning some advanced painting techniques. Today we are going to learn how to highlight, how to dry brush, and how to antique. So since we learned base coating in the video previously, I have already base coated my dragon's eye. I put a little masking tape over the eye just to keep it protected from paint. You don't have to do this, but it saves you some aggravation down the line because if paint gets on this glass eye, you need more rubbing alcohol to clean it off, and you can risk also cleaning the paint off the rest of your project. So this just saves you some hassle down the road. So the first thing we're going to be doing is some antiquing. I have pre-mixed myself some brown paint. You have a color chart included with your thing, so you can see I mixed red with green to make my brown. Don't feel like you're limited to the paint I've included in this box. If you have acrylic paint at home, you can absolutely use that. I just didn't think it was fair for me to bring in other colors that you don't have when I paint mine for tutorials. So I've mixed up my brown, and for antiquing, you're going to need a little bit of water, just a little bit. So you're going to take this brush here and just get the tip corner in your paint cup, your water cup, and just add a little bit. Just a few drops at a time to your paint, because it's easy to add more, but when you have too much, it's very hard to get it out again. So we're just going to mix that up till this is a little runny, but not watercolor. And I've just spread out some paper towel. When you paint, you should probably put down paper towel or a tablecloth so you don't wreck your surfaces. And don't wear clothes you mind getting paint on. Because acrylic paint usually comes out in the wash, but every once in a while, if it just dries too long, it doesn't. And you don't want to wreck something you really like. So what you're going to do is with your flat brush, just lightly brush this over the top of the whole surface, or the parts where you want the paint. I'm going to be using this to get into the nooks and crannies of the scales and put some shadow in there to make them look a little aged. This will also pick up a lot of the textures, like I've made some dimples on the horn here, and that will pick those up. Once you get your first coat on, you're just going to fold up a little piece of paper towel like that and very gently just wipe it off. You don't want to go too hard the first time and wind up removing too much, or I've already knocked a couple of these little guys off and had to re-glue them. But I'm just going to brush that. So you see it's filled in most of the dimples on my horn and the little indents on some of these little tentacle things. I'd like to add a little bit more, brown there. I want my dragon eye to look older so he looks wise. I like a wise dragon, the kind that you see given riddles. This can be any color you want. If you want lighter, you can go with like a yellow or an orange if you go with red. If you've gone with a blue or a purple, you can use greens, blues, and pinks. You can use your color chart, your color wheel in there to see what kind of complements each other. So yeah, there's some nice depth going on. Don't forget to not to miss the tops. You can always wait till the top dries and go around and do the corners afterwards if you don't want to get too much paint on your hands. And you can layer this as many times as you want until it looks the way you want. Or you don't have to do this step at all. you're going to paint this the way you want. Alright, so I'm pretty happy with that, except for that corner there. So I'm going to leave this to dry, and then I'm going to come back and teach you the next technique. So what we're going to learn next now is called dry brushing, and it's pretty self-explanatory in that we are going to load our brush up with paint. I accidentally got my orange all over my hands. So I'm just going to load it straight from there. And then wipe X shapes I find work really good. A couple X shapes till when we brush it over our hands, very little paint comes off. And then just gently brush it over the top of our clay. You're going to notice it doesn't add a lot. That's kind of the point. You can build it up so it starts with a little bit, and it just picks up the highlights, so the taller parts of your dragon, like the tops of the bumps and the cool textures. So it makes like look like light is hitting it. I have so much paint on my hands. Gets to the point where even that's a little too much. There we go. If you run it over your knuckles, and you should just touch the tips of your knuckles. That's how you know you've got about the right amount. You don't have to push hard. Just brush it so it picks up the highest parts of your sculpture. If you're going to do this with more than one color, either switch to a new brush or wash this brush thoroughly and then dry it real good. You never want to start with a wet brush when you dry brush. It's right in the title, dry brushing, but it can take a while for them to dry. You can also use a hair dryer to speed up the drying on both your brushes and on your sculpture. Just keep it at like a low heat. You don't want it too hot. Just keep going with those layers until you're happy with how it looks. Whoopsie. And when you are, come on back and we'll teach you the third painting technique. And it's time for our last technique. This is going to call highlighting. Highlighting and antiquing are a little bit similar, but the difference is that highlighting is going to leave paint on your high parts, and antiquing leaves paint in the nooks and crannies. So when we antiqued earlier, we got all these browns inside the scales. With highlighting, we're going to get paint on the high points here, like on these polyps, and on the top corners of the scales and the horns. So highlighting is similar to dry brushing. You're just not going to need it as dry. And you're just going to gently run it. See, it's a little bit wetter. You don't have to do the X's like you do with the dry brush. Just sort of build it up in the places you want. You don't have to do it all over like you did with the others. So just gently at an angle. Oops, that's a little too much, but that's what this is for. You can wipe it. And if you get a little too much on, like I think I did here, I'm not a big fan of that, you can always go back and do another wash at the end of antiquing. Like I'm going to do that with the brown. And just like that until you get highlights just like on the tippy of the rounds and the tips of your horns. And just keep going on that until you're happy. If you would like something shiny, you can absolutely do that. You can use that with iridescent paints. You could sprinkle a little bit of glitter on the already wet paint if you do another round of antiquing. Or you can actually dry brush using nail polish. If anyone in your house has a little bit of nail polish, just wipe it onto your brush, same as when you dry brushed. You can just gently run it over and get a nice, cool, iridescent, shiny finish. And there you have it. Your finished dragon eye with 3 different kinds of painting techniques. If you join me for the next tutorial, we're going to learn about textures to prepare you for your final project, the 3D book cover.